Yep, we are live, guys. You can start.
Okay, are you able to see us properly in YouTube?
Let me let me open the YouTube channel in my
Sure,
mobile device.
sure.
Mm,
Yep,
Let me open
yep,
it. It's coming up, right?
yep.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. I think we have 4 more minutes to get started on yet another wonderful session from Atlassian community. We have a great international speaker this time. I think we'll just give 2 more minutes for people to join in, but we would just give a brief intro in the meantime. Atlassian community and what is Atlassian community doing? So Atlassian community is a user group which is directly funded by Atlassian, and the division that we are heading is from Trivandrum in Kerala in India. So we have Rachel Wright, who's an author, who's an entrepreneur, and I think she has written a great book on Jira Strategy. I think most of you will be able to purchase it in Amazon and in her website as well. I think she'll provide you more details on that. So this is one session where we are planning to make sure that we share our knowledge to each other to help us achieve our goals more faster. So Atlassian has a lot of products, as you guys know. We have Jira, Confluence, Trello, and a lot of other products. I think coming to the agile world, we are into complete usage of Atlassian products right now. So this is one opportunity for people who are actively working on Jira. This is one space you get to hear from the expert how to manage your Jira effectively. I think we have gone through multiple sessions prior to this one. The one that we had earlier was how to groom your backlog like a boss. It's like if you do not plan your activities and categorize things better, you will have a clutter of information happening. So similar to that, if you come to Jira, if you do not know how to manage your Jira dashboard, you're going to be in a difficult situation to get along, right? So Rachel, I think would walk you through how to go about with your daily task and get going with Jira. So probably I can share a brief about Rachel. So I think she's an entrepreneur, process engineer, as well as an Atlassian Certified Jira Administrator. So basically, as I've told you, she will let you know how to manage your Jira effectively. So her first book was Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel. So was written in Confluence, and the progress was actually tracked in Jira. That's how it has been. I think it's been a long journey for Rachel to come on board. I think she's been working with Atlassian products starting 2011. So I wish all the best to Rachel, and thank you everyone for joining yet another wonderful session from Atlassian. Please post your comments in YouTube. Please, have your questions ready. We'll be glad to answer those questions at the end of the session, provided with the time that we have. Else, we'll post those comments later. So Rachel will start in 1 minute from now. I think the official details. Till then, I think we can go for a formal introduction from your side, Rachel. Thank you very much. Once again, we welcome you from Atlassian User Group and Atlassian Community, Trivandrum.
Well, hi there, India. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm Rachel Wright. I'm a certified Jira administrator and author of the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. And as you said, I've been using Jira since 2011, and it's the best tool I've found to manage my work and the work of my team. So my goal here today is to help Jira administrators do certain things in their application that's going to make their administrative life much easier. So I have some best practices for maintaining and managing Jira to share with you today. All right, I'm going to switch to screen share. I'm going to stop my camera because my bandwidth might not hold up if I do both at the same time. Let me start the screen share real quick. And I have a few slides here for you today.
Can you guys please comment on YouTube if you're able to see our screens clearly so that we can get started?
My PowerPoint should be up. Let me know if you see it.
Sure.
There we go. Looks like it's loading. Excellent. All right, so today I'm excited to talk to you about how to set up some standards so you don't have more schemes and settings in Jira to maintain that are necessary. And then I want to talk about how to track changes and customization requests so you have a record of the things that people are doing in Jira and a good audit trail. And then we'll talk about how to clean up schemes and custom fields when you have too many, like I do. We'll talk a little bit about archiving old projects and unneeded issues that I know we all have. And then we'll finish with a little bit of information on how to train your users so they have the right information for their role. So first, I've got to give you a warning. This presentation contains swearing, a lot of swearing. I'm going to swear 10 times, and if you swear along with me, your Jira instance will be better tomorrow than it is today. So here's the first swear. I will avoid unnecessary configurations and over-customization. So the way to do this, it's all about setting standards and crafting usable policies to support your procedures, and also using project templates instead of creating something custom every time. So let's discuss each one of these ideas. So first, whether you have just started using Jira or you've been using it for many, many years, it's such a powerful and useful application, but it shouldn't be directed by a single person. I really believe that you need a group of people who care about the health of Jira, and you should set up a governance or a steering committee to establish standards specific to your organization, create some policies, and really select folks that care about the health of the application as a whole. So here are some duties of what this advisory board might do at your organization. And of course, you'll need to define your own. But my favorite here is defend and protect application health and future. And that's the real goal of this board. You want people who care about the long-term success of Jira to make the decisions on how Jira should be configured. Okay, so next you're going to form this advisory board, but who should you invite? My recommendations are listed. Invite everyone who's excited about managing Jira for the long term, and keep anyone off your board who only cares about like their Jira project or some special feature that they need. Those people aren't good long-term board members usually. And then swap these people out periodically. Don't be afraid to replace someone who isn't considering the long-term health of the application or is negatively impacting the mission. And it's good to change people every now and then to get some fresh perspectives and some new information too. And for these folks on the board, they don't have to be Jira admins. You don't have to give them admin permissions, but let these people help decide and make good decisions about what the configuration should look like. So hopefully this gives you a start. You can go home and think about how to form an advisory board at your company. So next, I want to talk about what kind of policies this board should create. So I'm already giving you homework. So I think the board should create a written policy for customization, application security, for protecting or preventing sharing of sensitive information, and then of course any regulatory or specific governance regulations for your country or your industry. So my very favorite policy is the customization policy. What are you going to allow to be changed in your application? And this one's so important. Sometimes as a Jira administrator, you know that you have to say no when somebody asks for a certain change, And this request policy is going to help you when you have to say no. Sometimes it's hard, especially if you have to say no to your boss. So what elements should be in a good customization policy? So the stuff that I think is in there, I've listed on the screen. But save some time, go ahead and download my customization policy worksheet to help you craft your own. And this worksheet comes free if you have my book, the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. So definitely put this one in place. Next, every application needs an application security policy. And those usually say what you can and can't do with all the applications at your organization, including Jira. Probably years ago, right? Maybe the day you joined the company and not since. So I recommend that you post the parts that impact Jira with your other Jira documentation so you can remind users, what is it okay to do in Jira and what is not okay to do in Jira. And this is probably a different answer to that question at different organizations. But one thing that seems to impact everyone is sensitive information. So for me, I like to keep sensitive information outside of Jira or any application that's accessible to all users, but you have to make that decision for your company. But have your advisory board make a decision, right? Have them decide what is sensitive information at your company and what's permitted in Jira. So your policy is going to depend on a whole lot of different things, right? Everyone's different. Some of those factors are, is your application subject to compliance standards? How do you control access to that sensitive information? What are your other internal community information security policies? Some industries have specific policies and guidelines. Some countries do. If you take credit card payments and store that information, you have some special policies and then other related factors. So first determine what really applies to your organization. And then of course this data, it's either called PII or SPI. And it's the stuff that we all know shouldn't be shared, right? Like passwords, social security numbers, and then also things like health insurance and employee salaries, citizen status, really anything that is confidential or personal company information. That's the stuff you got to watch out for. And here's one more example. A lot of people use Jira as an asset management tracker. So think about what asset details might be damaging if they got into the wrong hands. So an easy example is, a list of server IP addresses. You got to store those addresses somewhere, but should they be stored in Jira? That's something you need to decide for your organization because in the wrong hands, that information could be exploited. And then next, you've got specific policies depending on, your country, your industry, what kind of work that you do. So here are just a few that I've listed out. There's a lot more. But have your board think about which policies apply to you and how that impacts your use of Jira. All right, enough on boring policies. Let's talk about creating project templates. So as you know, Jira comes loaded with default schemes to get you started. But there's a tendency at organizations to start building more custom schemes. Before you do that, decide how many you're going to support and don't build more than you need. So I suggest you start out with just 3. Have one set of schemes and settings for all the dev type projects, one for all the support, being one project template. So let's just talk about a development template as an example. So here's what your template might look like. You're obviously going to have a specific set of issues in your issue type scheme. And usually it's epic, story, bug, task, and subtask. So that's the setting for the dev project. And then the dev project probably has screens with specific fields like fix version, effects version, story points, sprints, all that good stuff. So make that part of your standard template. And then maybe the bug issue type has a special workflow that asks for certain specific fields like steps to reproduce or expected result. So that's a really simple and common development scheme, right? You don't need to make 5 different templates for development projects. Development is development, right? So create one, document all these settings so the team knows what each template contains, and then start each new team that's going to use Jira off with a project that uses one of these 3 templates. And then if they come back a few months later and say, you know what, this template really doesn't work for me, that's okay. And maybe it's time to make something custom, but make sure there's a business need before you start customizing. I did this backwards. I made this mistake where any new team that came to me and said, hey, we want to start using Jira, we create something custom from them from day one. And that was a super mistake because it was impossible to maintain. So I recommend you do the opposite. Start them off with a standard template and then only change if there's a real business need to create new custom elements. All right, the next best practice is change management. And that really starts with a way to record your changes and communicate them to both your fellow admins and all the users of Jira. So where do you track your changes today? You can track them anywhere. Hopefully it's not in sticky notes or emails or nowhere at all. I like to track my Jira changes in Jira. And I create a project in Jira to support all the Atlassian apps, or you can create one to support all the internal applications at your company. Either way is fine. And of course, if you have Jira Service Management, you can add a Jira request form to your help center. Either way, the easiest place to track Jira application changes is in Jira. And this works perfectly well, except when Jira is unavailable for maintenance. So like if you have Jira Server during a migration or during an upgrade. So just keep that in mind that your data might not be available to you during those procedures. Okay, so you've created some place to track your Jira application changes. What should you track? So my personal rule is that I'm going to document any change that only an application or system administrator can make. User changes, not tracked, don't need to be tracked. Project admin changes probably don't need to be tracked either. So like I wouldn't track adding a component, something that a project level admin can do, but I would track things like installing new apps or creating new permission schemes or setting up a new incoming mail handler, things of that level. So why bother? It sounds like a lot of work, right? Well, Jira has an audit log, but that audit log doesn't provide a whole lot of detail. It records your changes and the timestamps of when those changes happen, but it's just a log. What it can't do, it can't tell you why you made a certain change or who requested you make that change or other important details in case maybe in the future a Jira administrator needs to undo your change. So it's really important to have this why documentation for your future team members. If there's a problem and you need to go back and make a fix. And then of course, in Jira, sometimes there's many ways to make the same change. And this documentation is the only thing that's going to explain why you did it a certain way. So one thing that's good to know about the audit log, Atlassian has a free version of Jira Cloud these days, but that free version doesn't contain the audit log function. So it's especially important to log your changes if you're using that. Okay, so the next best practice is a test environment. And it's shocking, but so many organizations I've worked with just don't even have one. And I didn't have one when I started out either. I made all my mistakes directly in production. But it's so important to have a sandbox where you can experiment and make changes and learn without impacting production data. So create a place to import just a small amount of your real data so you can see how your changes are going to work under real life scenarios. So in this screen, that this is the test environment because it's really easy to confuse production with tests sometimes. So, the first thing I did, I changed the color scheme totally. It's green instead of the default blue in production. I added an announcement banner. I changed the display name to Jira Dev. Of course, the application URL is going to be different. And then I also changed my user avatar icon, which shows up at the top right when I log in. And then some organizations take this even farther and change the application logo on the top left. So it doesn't matter how you distinguish your test environment from production, just make sure you can visually tell which environment you're in at all times. So a couple tips for your test environment. First, I like to disable email because I don't want to notify end users with duplicate or test data. So keep email off unless you're testing something email specific. And then if you are a Jira server or data center customer, I like to give the application admin team read-only access to the database. Now, you don't have to be a DBA. I'm certainly not a database administrator, but being able to see how the data is structured will solve so many mysteries and help to make you a better admin. So, for example, you can access additional information that's just not available in the admin UI. And everything you can learn about Jira in any way, shape, or form is going to make you smarter and a better admin in the long run. So I like to give folks just read-only access. Don't make any changes directly in the database, but definitely be able to see how the data is stored. All right, so here's some options for getting your own test environment if you don't have one already. I listed my favorite ideas at the top. So let's start with cloud on the left. If you're using Atlassian's hosted environment, the easiest thing to do is just to get a second instance and pay the lowest licensing tier. And then, of course, there's also that free version that I mentioned earlier. It's just like the paid version, but there's a couple missing features. It doesn't have permissions for Jira projects or issues, and it doesn't have the audit log, and it won't be useful for testing those areas. So for me, that's why I listed it second. I'd prefer just to pay for the smallest license to have all the features that I need to test. You can also get a 7-day free trial and extend it for another 30 days by contacting Atlassian support. It's something, but for me, a 37-day trial isn't too helpful in the long term. I think you need something available all the time. But if you've got no better options and you just really cannot set up another cloud instance, at least create a test project in your production instance and make all your changes there first. And then for server and data center customers on the right, you can also get a free license for development and testing purposes. Just have your technical contact log in to my.atlassian.com and they can generate that license that you need. And then you can also get a second instance and pay the lowest licensing tier. That's usually what I do. And that's the create a test project in your production instance idea again. Not ideal, but better than nothing. So regardless of what method you choose, just make sure you've got a place to test your changes before you unleash them on your users. Okay, so you've already created your advisory board. There's a second group of people I recommend, and I just call them ambassadors. And these are people who help you share information, answer questions, and basically provide tier 1 support to users. Because a lot of times users have questions that don't really require a Jira administrator to answer. So the Jira administrators can be freed up to do, make bigger changes that only they can make. So I make this part of any project lead or project admin duties. So when a team comes to me and says, hey, I want to add my team to Jira, I say, great, guess what? You're going to be a project level admin. I'm going to train you on how to manage your project. And as part of that role, you're going to be on our ambassador team and you're going to be a power user and I'm going to enlist you to help others. Okay, time for some more swearing. So I will actively maintain and update my application. And I also swear to uninstall expired apps and removed unused connections and integrations when you no longer need them. So let's talk about creating a maintenance plan so you have a healthy application. And it's really essential to be proactive. If you wait till something breaks, it's too late. So here are some things to determine in your application. So first, what regular maintenance actions are you going to perform? And how often are you going to do each one? And then how are you going to communicate those activities to the end users? And sometimes end users don't know you're doing some maintenance, and that's fine. But sometimes changes you make will impact them. So you need a way to kind of warn them beforehand and then be ready to answer questions after if things don't go as planned or if things look different to the user than before. So there's 23 things that I personally do quarterly, and you can download my scheduled maintenance worksheet to help you identify the things you need to do and document your plan. So go grab that worksheet. And now I have some information for Jira Server and Data Center users. But if you're cloud, don't tune out. Listen to this anyway. And the reason is sometimes server features come to cloud, and also sometimes maybe you switch jobs and your new company uses server or data center. So it's really helpful to know how other types of Jira work. One day that information is going to come in handy. So for you server and data center users, here's 3 great tools that will help you with your maintenance duties. The first is the built-in health check function, and it's part of the troubleshooting and support tools. So this will help you check for common problems with your file system, attachments, index, database, lots of good stuff running in the background in Jira. So in my screenshot, you can see that the check has detected a problem, and then you can click on that to expand it and see additional details and clues to solve that issue. And then when there is a problem, Jira is going to show administrators on an on-screen message when you've logged into the admin area. And you can control the frequency of how often you see those notifications. Just change that setting on the right. Now for me, I like to turn it up as high as possible. I always want to know if Jira thinks there's something wrong with Jira. So that's the default, show all notifications. All right, the next tool is the integrity checker. And I love this tool. It checks for a variety of search, permission, workflow, and issue problems. So I always run these tests after I've made major workflow changes or I've done a major cleanup, and it always seems to find something that's not working properly in the background to help me. Now this can take a while. For me, if I run all the tests, it takes anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So maybe don't run all the tests at the same time. You can choose to exclude some of the tests if you haven't changed that area of Jira. So you can see in this screenshot that it did detect some problems, and you can either explore this issue and fix it on your own, or you can ask Jira to try to fix it for you. When you scroll down, there's a fix button. So in my case here with this error was caused because I removed a permission scheme and there was still a reference in it to the database. So I said, I don't really know how to fix this error on my own. I'm going to let the integrity checker fix it for me. I clicked the fix button at the bottom. Everything looked fine. And then I went ahead and I reran this check a second time just to make sure, and the error was gone and I never had trouble with that permission scheme again. So easy, nice when Jira fixes Jira problems for you. And then the last maintenance tool I wanted to mention is the Integrity Check for Jira app. It's from Botron Software and it's available in the Atlassian Marketplace. And I love this because it's the only tool that helps you detect, locate, and fix errors with user objects like filters, agile boards, and dashboards. So how many of us have way too many of those in our Jira application? I know I do. I know I have broken dashboards from users who left the company years ago. So this tool can help you clean up all that stuff. So in my screenshot, you can see it found 91 problems of missing or duplicate settings. And then what's really great about this tool is it doesn't just tell you there's a problem, it tells you exactly what the problem is and where to find it so you can fix it. You don't have to hunt around, guess, look through other logs, search Google. Like it's right here telling you exactly what to do. So I've got an example for you. If there's like a broken JQL filter, this tool is going to tell you the name of the filter, who owns it, the specific JQL, and then what's wrong in the JQL, like a missing status, field, or selection. So it's super easy. I can go update this filter myself on behalf of the user, or I can just tell the user, hey, by the way, your filter's broken. Here's how to fix it. Or, hey, if you don't need it anymore, how about you delete it? So I love this tool. Okay, let's move on to our next best practice, which is cleanup. So periodically, we all need to audit what we have and remove what we no longer need, right? It's going to happen. Your instance is going to grow at a speed that it's hard to keep up with, and sometimes you got to get rid of old junk. So what do? You swear to clean up unneeded schemes and settings, right? Well, here's how to do that. The first thing is to archive. And I'm saying archive in quotes right now because the only real archivability is in Jira Data Center or Jira Cloud Premium. But it's okay, if you don't have those 2 flavors of Jira, there's other things you can do. So none of my ideas on this slide are going to improve performance. The only way to improve performance is to take issues out of the index. But this is a step in the right direction to getting rid of old stuff that you no longer need. So here are some things that I do. First, I change the project name, right? I prepend the word X archived to the front of the project's name. And that way, all the archive projects appear at the bottom of any list alphabetically. So I don't have to see them. Then I do the same thing. I create a category called X archive, and I put all the old projects we don't need anymore in that category. Then next, I change the project's icon. I change it to some big scary red X or a lock or something that shows that, hey, this is not a normal project, something different is going on here. Then I use the project's description area to add some copy. So I write a sentence like, project data is still available for legal and historical reasons, but no new issues can be created or edited. And then I tell the user where to create new issues instead. So I usually link to a different project. Next, I disable the ability to edit or transition issues. And then sometimes I allow issues to be moved to another project, maybe for a few months or some short period of time. And then other times I just hide the project altogether. It really just depends on the level of not needing this information anymore. And then the last thing you can do is you can remove the notification scheme, because when there's no activity in a project, there's no notification scheme needed. So get rid of that. So here's how to remove unneeded schemes. So after I've done all of those things in my archive list, I go through all the admin areas in Jira and I look for unused and unneeded schemes and settings that I can also get rid of. So this is a really easy example from the permission schemes admin page. So that second scheme there, it's not used by any projects, so there's no use in keeping that around. So just delete that one. Click the delete button on the right and it's gone and it's out of your way. And then look at that third scheme. So you can tell that it was created by Jira when I created a Jira Service Desk project. And you can tell because of the way it's named. So another cleanup you can do on this screen is rename that third scheme to represent its purpose instead of the name of the project using it. So every time you create schemes in Jira, you want to share these schemes between multiple projects. You don't want to create one scheme per project. So those are two easy cleanup things you can do. Go through all the other admin areas in Jira and do the same thing. And this is obviously a very manual and time-consuming process, but it's worth it, I promise. Don't get overwhelmed, just tackle one Jira admin area at a time. So just a quick tip, sometimes it's useful to know the ID of a scheme or a setting so you can find it. And there's a few ways to get it. You can hover over one of the links in the actions column on the right, and you'll see the ID in your browser status bar. And then if you click one of the links, you see the ID, like in the screenshot at the bottom on the next page. And then also you can get ID information from the Jira database if you have read-only access like we talked about earlier. All right, let's talk about cleaning up unneeded custom fields. But first I have a real warning now this time. Now, I need to say, don't just start deleting custom fields. You need information before you can make deletion decisions, because deleting a custom field can't be undone and custom field data cannot be recovered. So be very careful when clicking that delete button or there will be real swearing. Okay, so here's my quick method for how to determine what's okay to delete. The idea is to reduce your custom field count. So we know that too many custom fields impacts performance, and it's also just a mess to maintain for your users and your admins. So the first thing to do is to audit what you have. You need to understand what custom fields were created and how different is your Jira configuration from the default field list. Do you have just 2 more extra fields or do you have 200 extra fields? So use my worksheet at the bottom to figure out which of your fields are custom, which are standard, which were created by apps, which were created by Jira admins. And then also a couple ideas for approaching your audit. I usually do a manual examination, but you can also get an app from the Atlassian Marketplace to help speed it up. So I've got a list of apps that you might check out at the end of the presentation. I'll show you that slide later. And apps can certainly help tremendously with your research. They can help you save time, uncover fields, but really only a human can determine the value of a specific custom field in your organization. So even if you use an app to help you, you're going to have to do some analysis on your own and really think about, why do you need to keep that custom field, or why do you need to remove that custom field? All right, so either manually or with an app, you're going to make a list of all the fields, their types, and then I start researching each one by one to classify each field. Once I know what each field is being used for, I can make a list of fields that I probably don't need anymore. So once you have that list of unneeded fields, determine if there's data underneath those fields that you either need to retain or that you can delete. So no matter what you do, first, always take a backup and then remove the field from the admin UI if you don't need any of the data. If you do need the data that that field is currently storing, again, take a backup and then move that data or append it to a different field that you're keeping in Jira. So there's a lot of ways to keep that data, to move it to a different field. You can move it with a workflow post function. You can use a script. You can use import or export utilities. Again, at the end of the presentation, I have a slide that lists some of the apps that you can use to do this. But my favorites are the JSU automation suite for Jira workflows. That helps you move data between fields. Script Runner for Jira is a great way to script this, or you can use the Jira command line interface to do it. All right, so when cleaning up your instance and removing custom fields, always go slow. I like to just delete or change one thing at a time and let it sit for a minute and just make sure that no problems have arisen. Right, make a change, let your get any trouble areas, and then you'll know exactly where to look. If you change too many things at one time, it's very hard to know how to go and fix maybe something that you've broken. And then just a tip, it's good to know that if you remove custom fields, you're definitely going to break your user filters, and that might break their boards and their dashboards. So you can use that integrity check for Jira app that we talked about earlier to detect those problems and help users fix their broken filters. All right, now after you've made a deletion and you've migrated your data, it's a good idea to do a reindex in Jira Data Center or Jira Server. Jira Cloud will do it for you automatically. But do know that reindexes can impact performance, so I like to do them outside of peak hours. And then after any cleanup activity, go back, update your documentation, and don't forget to log your changes so you know why you deleted that field, when you did it, and all the great details that you've probably remembered to log. And then also add this custom field audit to your regular maintenance schedule. I try to periodically go through. Of course, if you resist the urge to create unneeded custom fields in the first place, you'll have less to clean up next time. So this is a recurring activity, but the next time you do it, it should be much easier. So one last tip on this, when a user comes to me and they ask for a new custom field, I always ask them how they're going to report on the data in that field. And if they have no idea, that's a good clue to me that maybe a custom field isn't warranted. Only create custom fields that are going to be queried. The next thing you can do to help your users and also help your admins maintain Jira is to shorten long workflows. And we all have them. It's something everybody ends up with. I think the worst workflow I've seen, I think they had something like 47 statuses and over 1,000 transitions. So you definitely want to stay away from long workflows in the beginning, but if you already have them, you can clean them up. So think of ways that you can make your long workflow more efficient. And one way is to use what I call a phased approach. So instead of capturing every little step in the workflow, instead of reflecting all those 47 different steps I told you about, divide them up into phases, break them up into categories that represent a collection of smaller steps instead. So in this method, each phase represents a status, and all the small little things that happen in that phase, those don't need to be statuses in Jira. They might still happen in the background, but Jira is just going to record the high level phase. So in this simple example, a company is signing a partnership agreement with another company. So there's a lot of things that happen, but not all of those need to be reflected in Jira. So we can use a very short workflow like open, in review, in execution, and closed. So here's what that phased approach looks like. It's a super simple 4-step workflow. But again, lots of stuff is happening in the background. The legal team is doing a lot of things that just don't need to be reflected in Jira. So like in the review status, maybe they're reviewing the contract, researching legal topics. They're probably communicating with internal teams, maybe negotiating terms with the external company. All of that's going to happen in one phase. And then in the execution status, more things are happening. The CEO is finding his favorite signing pen, and both companies are trading paperwork back and forth. And the legal team maybe enters documents into their contracts database. But when you use a phased approach like this, it's super flexible and much easier for your users than a super long workflow. And kind of like I said earlier, if you're not going to query for a certain status, just like if you're not going to query for a custom field, that's a clue that it might not be needed or useful. So when somebody asks for a new status in their workflow, really have them explain how they're going to use that new status, so you can determine as the Jira expert whether it's really warranted or not. Okay, no long workflows, got it. All right, the next best practice is training. And I like to deliberately shower users, service desk agents. I like to deliver content just for their role and just when they need it. So what you should focus on when you're determining how to train your users is what are each group's training needs and the timeline. How are you going to encourage adoption? And then how are you going to deliver that information on an ongoing schedule? So let me give you an example. I try to think of the things that each role is most interested in. So what does a brand new user need on their very first day? There's certain things that they just don't need to know right away, right? So just give them the basics. Answer questions like, what is Jira? How do you use it? And how do you access it? Don't overwhelm them on their first day. But maybe 15 days later, now they're not brand new anymore. They're just a regular user, and they're going to want some more information. So at that point in time, I talk to them about sharing information, organizing their data, how to create filter subscriptions, how to link issues, how to log time. And then think about power users. In their journey, they want to know about basic and advanced search, JQL, making bulk changes. And then another group that needs specific training is anyone who's leading something. So like a team lead or a project manager, scrum master, they're going to really care about dashboards, boards, and reports. So I have specific training just for that group, just on those topics. And then service desk agents obviously have different needs too. They want to know how to meet those SLAs, how to use the additional JSM reporting features to support their customers. And then finally, there's other folks like us, other admins on our team, and they're going to need information about certification, performance, creating those effective and short workflows, best practices, mistakes, and certification too. So I have specialized training just for my fellow admins. So the point here is don't try to deliver one training session to everyone at the same time. It's not going to be very effective. Break it up by role and break it up by time. All right, so the final swear. Above all, I will leave Jira in a healthier state than I inherited it. And if this is your goal, all the admins who come after you will be very happy campers. All right, so you've probably heard of the Hippocratic Oath or the phrase, first do no harm, and it's a list of ethical statements for doctors. So for us, we have the Jiracratic Oath, and I think of it as the 10 Commandments for Jira. And these are the statements that we saw throughout the presentation. So you can take the Jiracratic Oath at the URL shown, and you can download your certificate, and this will look fabulous on your office wall. So here's that slide I mentioned earlier with all the URLs, all the useful apps in the Atlassian Marketplace to help you audit your custom fields, understand what's going on in your application, and then links to download all the worksheets and goodies I talked about. So I'll give you a second to take a screenshot or snap a photo. And then finally, as was mentioned in the beginning, I'm the author of the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. And if you want to send me some feedback on this presentation so I can improve it for the next group of users, I will enter you to win a digital copy of my book. So thank you very much. I look forward to answering any of your questions about maintaining your Jira application.
Hey, thank you very much, Rachel. That has been wonderful. I think people would have been overwhelmed to know to start with how to go about with Jira administration. I think most of the people would be completely new to this topic. I think you've covered a lot of topics. Just to start with, I think you've taken a different approach of giving an oath on how we should make sure that we clean up the application, how we should maintain it, right? So that has been great. I think you've gone about with, I think, one more point which I wanted to share about us. She has actually provided the worksheets that you can always access in jirastrategy.com/worksheets in the links that we've provided here. And also you can actually make sure to do these small things that she has always advised to do. And some of the questions which we have got, Rachel, just wanted to know, what are the best practices for managing report and data export privileges in Jira?
For managing the ability to export the data. Tell me more about that question.
Yeah. So when you take reports, right, how can you make sure that the data export privileges are retained properly so that you get the best content and best combination of data when you export it? Is there anything that we should look at from the privilege perspective when we do export as an admin?
So I don't have an answer to that question specifically, but I have kind of a related story. I had an example of a Jira instance where users were created with external email addresses.
Mm-hmm.
And the implication here is that when people do export that report data, it was going outside company servers. So while I think it's okay to let users export data and massage it and do what they want to do with it outside of Jira, just make sure you're keeping that information on your own network inside your own domain, and not send it all around the internet for anyone to access. I don't think that answered your question. I'm sorry, but that's my tangent story on that topic.
Right. I think it depends upon the privilege that you provide to each of those customers as well as the companies, how we want to export the data in terms of privileges, right? So rest, I think, would be taken care by Jira. So the next question, probably, Rachel, for a lot of people who be completely new to Jira administration, how should they start? I think they've gone through your video. What is the next step? People who are completely new to Jira administration.
That's a great question. Matter of fact, I have an article on my website that's called 9 Ways to Learn Jira Administration. So go to jirastrategy.com and just search for 9 ways. But I can recount some of them here. One is to join your Atlassian community group, and go to events just like this today. One, read the Atlassian Jira Administration Handbook. That is so helpful. It talks about all the different things you need to know. Obviously, read the documentation, join groups, other groups online. For example, there are LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups where you can ask questions in addition to community.atlassian.com. Also think about getting certified. Now, I know the first day that you become a Jira admin, certification is probably not on your radar, but the point is the impact of studying for that certification test will make you a better administrator. I learned new things from taking that test that I didn't know before. So those are just a couple ways that you can kind of start on your Jira journey, and be willing to make mistakes, because I made every mistake there is to make, but try to make them in a test environment and not in production.
Like, I think you had to access a production environment to start your journey itself. I think you showed in the presentation, right? So great one. I think it'll be a lot of takeaways from this session, basically on how to make sure you archive your checklist, remove the unwanted schemes which are there, and how to make sure you do a regular backup when you go about deleting it. You never know what will happen, right? And some of the interesting things that you've covered are the automation workflows, which are basically script runner for Jira. I think that's one that you covered, and JSU automation. And there are a lot of automation tools which are available, I think. So, and custom field cleanups. And I'm just trying to summarize some of those pointers that you've come up with, so the viewers actually can go back and review these pointers. So all these things, I think, have summed it up really well from the Jira strategy perspective as well as from the admin perspective. So for all of you who are listening, I think Rachel has already mentioned to you her book, Jira Strategy, is a wonderful one to start your journey on Jira, and her website, jirastrategy.com. Please try to visit them as well. I think we have overshot our time for 17 minutes as well. So I think it has been wonderful, Rachel. So we would like to thank everyone who has been part of this session, who have watched this, have taken time of your busy schedules to come on and then listen to this live broadcast from Atlassian Community Trivandrum. And a heartfelt thank you to Rachel. So waking up so early in the morning in your times, in your busy schedule, for accepting our invite. And from all the members of Atlassian, we mention a heartfelt thank you to you. Any other last pointers to add, Rachel?
I just wanted to address another question really quickly, if that's okay, that I saw in the chat, about how to prevent mistakes when you're doing bulk data uploads. The first thing to do is to do an export of the data that you want to upload so you get the format right. So just do a quick CSV export, use that as a template, add your data, and load 1 or 2.
Perfect. I think that answered the second question as well, right, Rachel? So I think we have had good response from the entire community here. So I think from our side, Atlassian Community Trivandrum, heartfelt thank you for everyone who's joined the session. Rachel, thank you very much for joining, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.